the creek that's flowed behind your home since before the Civil War. Diesel fumes mix with the dust of crushed limestone, filling your nostrils as you watch $80,000 of your fees being poured into what was once a crystal clear mountain stream. It's for flood control, House President Brenda Hartwell announces smugly from her white Tesla. What she doesn't realize: I'm a retired Army Corps hydrologist, and she's just built herself a ticking time bomb. Fast forward 6 months. Brenda's $1 million home is sitting in 2 feet of swamp water, the foundation cracking, while my modest property stays bone dry. The FBI is knocking at her door, and that concrete channel she bragged about is about to ruin her. What would you do if your HOA stole your money and destroyed your peace? Where are you watching from? I bet your neighbors have tried something just as insane. My name's Dale Brennan. I'm 58, and until half a year ago, I thought my biggest headache was finding carburetor parts for my '72 Harley Sportster. I was wrong. The real threat was an HOA president who confused a real estate license with a PhD in hydroengineering, inherited my grandfather's 2-acre slice of paradise in what used to be rural Colorado, back when Willowbrook was nothing but cattle pasture and HOA meant herd of Angus. My grandfather, William Brennan, was a combat engineer who survived Normandy and came home determined to build something beautiful. This creek was his therapy. For the 3 years since retiring from the Corps, I'd kept the same morning ritual coffee on the back porch, listening to Cottonwood Creek babble over smooth granite stones, the scent of motor oil from my workshop blending with wet willow bark, and the rhythmic sound of my boots crunching along gravel paths Granddad laid by hand in 1948. Martha, my wife of 26 years, teaches 4th grade and has the patience of a saint, which she'd need for what was coming. Our kids had scattered like tumbleweeds. Jessica, a trauma nurse in Portland, and Mike, a software developer in Austin, both inherited Granddad's stubborn streak. What made this property special wasn't the 1950s ranch house or my cluttered workshop full of vintage motorcycle parts. It was the 400 yards of creek with water rights dating back to 1873. Older than Colorado's statehood, older than electric lights, and definitely older than self-important suburban newcomers. Then came Willowbrook Estates, sprouting up like overpriced mushrooms after rain. 47 homes, average price $900,000, mostly California transplants fleeing their own HOA nightmares. The irony was thick enough to cut with a spade. Enter our villain, Brenda Hartwell, 52, HOA president and self-proclaimed empress of suburban perfection. She came fresh from Marin County, armed with that lethal mix of entitlement and ignorance only real estate agents who sell overpriced homes to desperate buyers can possess. White Tesla, vanity plate reading sold 4U pearl earrings, worn like battle armor. Her husband's an investment banker commuting to Denver. Her kids go to private school where they probably learn to identify people like me as economically disadvantaged instead of people with different priorities. Their $1.2 million colonial sits right against my creek, manicured lawn stopping where real nature begins. The first shot came on a Tuesday morning that smelled of fresh coffee and future legal bills. An official HOA violation notice, certified mail, unsightly storage of automotive parts visible from neighboring properties, violated their aesthetic standards. Fine, $200, per Dalton Y, until I complied. I read it twice, letting the absurdity soak in. Their lawyers had missed one little detail. My property predates their HOA by 80 years. My deed includes mineral rights, water rights, and a grandfathered exemption from all future development restrictions. But they were betting this old mechanic wouldn't know property law. The face-to-face went exactly as expected. Her office smelled of vanilla candles and condescension. With her practiced smile, she suggested I might be happier somewhere with more flexible property standards. Translation: somewhere poorer. I replied with a certified letter explaining that HOA covenants don't apply to grandfathered properties. Basic real estate law. Her retaliation came quick and expensive. Anonymous complaints to the county about illegal business operations. Because fixing motorcycles apparently looks criminal to people who pay others to change their oil. A building inspector poked around for 2 hours, finding nothing except my unorthodox organization system. It still cost me $1,200 in legal fees to prove I wasn't running a chop shop, but that was just Brenda testing the waters, literally and figuratively. She soon discovered that in Colorado, water rights mean power. And in her mind, people like me, calloused hands, inherited land, didn't deserve either. Then I knew, this wasn't about motorcycle parts. This was war. Spring snowmelt was heavy that year. Cottonwood Creek roared over the beaver dam, 100 yards upstream. It should have been peaceful. Except Brenda had her next move ready. That's she'd hired Peton and Associates, a Denver law firm specializing in environmental property disputes. A polite way of saying, weaponizing regulations to screw your neighbors. They filed a nuisance water flow complaint with the county, claiming my property's dangerous runoff threatened million-dollar homes downstream. The legal papers arrived Thursday morning, 57 pages of jargon designed to force me into a $50,000 environmental impact study, the kind that drags on for 2 years and uses consultants who probably golf with the opposing lawyers. That evening, Martha found me knee-deep in creek water, using my grandfather's old surveyor's rod. "What are you thinking?" she asked in that teacher voice. "That means trouble's coming." "I'm thinking Brenda's lawyers just made a $50,000 mistake," I said, watching water swirl around a boulder Granddad placed in 53. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 30 years with the Army Corps of Engineers. I called my old colleague Pete Morrison at the Colorado Water Authority. In 10 minutes, he spotted what Peton's team missed. They'd based their entire complaint on watershed maps from 1967, before the interstate, before half the subdivisions upstream, before modern storm drains changed everything. Pete laughed. "These maps are ancient history. Want me to send the real surveys?" The updated geological data told a different story. My section of creek actually reduced flood risk by acting as natural retention during runoff. Granddad's granite boulders weren't just pretty. They were a flood control system decades ahead of its time. And here's the kicker. Colorado's prior appropriation doctrine says, first come, first served. Our water rights, documented since 1873, trumped anything filed afterward, Brenda's HOA included. I spent the weekend in my workshop surrounded by maps, engineering notebooks, and coffee, connecting the dots Brenda's lawyers had missed. Monday morning, I filed a counter complaint demanding they pay for an environmental assessment backed by Pete's analysis showing the subdivision increased downstream flooding risk. The county water commissioner, Rodriguez, who'd been handling disputes since before Brenda knew Colorado existed, took one look at my evidence and laughed. "Mr. Brennan, this might be the shortest water rights case in state history." 2 weeks later, complete vindication. The county sided with me, ordered the HOA to stop all water-related harassment, and legally validated my historical water rights. The story hit the local paper. OA challenges century-old water rights, loses spectacularly. That's when neighbors I'd never met started knocking with their own Brenda horror stories, mailbox violations, garden fines, threats over paint colors. Martha found me by the creek at sunset. I told her, "Granddad taught me water always finds its path and always goes where it belongs." She asked, "And where does this water belong?" I smiled, listening to the creek babble straight through Brenda's perfect little kingdom. You'd think losing would humble her. You'd be wrong. I spread a detailed case timeline across my workbench. "This isn't just one fight," I told them. "We're in 4 battles at once, and we're going to win them all." The strategy was complex but beautiful. Federal case, Clean Water Act violations, and illegal habitat destruction. State case, water rights violations, and environmental permit fraud. County case, building code breaches, and improper special assessments. Civil case, fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, and emotional distress. Each case backed up the others, like overlapping arcs of fire. Even if Brenda somehow won one, the remaining three would destroy her. And thanks to the private attorney general doctrine Kate mentioned, if we won, the law would force her to pay our legal costs. Environmental laws actually encourage citizens to take violators to court when the government falls behind on enforcement. The financial investigation had become both fascinating and frightening. Sarah had brought in 2 law students and a forensic accounting professor who treated HOA corruption like a puzzle. They found Brenda's inflated contract scheme stretched back 3 years, landscaping, security, legal consulting, all tied to her business network, the total. Over $200,000 stolen from homeowner fees. That wasn't just civil fraud, it crossed into federal racketeering, the kind that leads to years in prison. Meanwhile, I was working on plans to restore the creek, blending my grandfather's original surveys with modern environmental engineering. The natural channel design would prevent flooding and restore fish habitat for about $35,000. Less than half of what Brenda had wasted on her concrete failure. Colorado